can we just go home, please? Hannah?
Still rattled. I've never heard anything like that in my life. It sounded like a mix between almost like a pig.
So Stella McDonald and her now ex-husband used to love exploring abandoned structures together. And once, they remember that they found this shack that was like a mile away from their home, deep in the forest. Like I'm talking the grass and trees were so grown and tall that they couldn't even get into the shack at first. But like, Stella's ex managed to get a window open, they climbed through it. Also, I think this is where I interject a warning. Don't do this yourself. If you feel the need to urban explore, do it safely. I think that's being safe on the internet. Stella said they found almost a time capsule in this little shack. They found piles of expensive furniture, stuff covered in really dusty sheets. Apparently, a lot of stuff looked kind of expensive. Even the wallpaper looked rich. But it was a shack in the middle of the forest. It seemed like the former residents walked away from all of it in the 50s or 60s, and the exterior was a mess. So the kitchen was upstairs, which is so weird, but the duo went up and there was this like huge arch opening into like a gentleman's type man cave. And once again, folks, there was expensive furniture everywhere. So Stella stood in the archway of this room because she felt weird vibes, and her ex was rummaging through the clutter looking for something valuable that they could bring with them. And then Stella was like, oh, there's a mirror. She was gonna check her hair. She's like, I wanna make sure there's no spider webs in it. And it's like, gross. And she took maybe 3 steps away from the mirror to tell her ex that she wanted to leave because she felt like there was a presence right beside her. And then when she looked back into the mirror, she saw that the words "get out" were suddenly scrawled on the mirror in bright pink lipstick that had not been there before. Now, Stella's sworn on everything. She's like, no, I would have seen it if I looked in the mirror first to check my hair and it was there. So yeah. And she also would have noticed if there was somebody physically also in that room with her and her husband. So when she saw the lipstick, she screamed. She leapt back into the kitchen, she fell, her ex came running over, and Stella was too scared to form words by this point. She just continued to point at the mirror and babble until the duo got safely away. Hard pass on doing that kind of urban exploring, for me. At least. Alright folks, we've got a Reddit story. So this one comes from user Camel Panda, took place in July of 1985. His dad was an avid outdoorsman, and together the two would go on many adventures together in the woods. So on this particular day, they were hiking down a very steep slope to get to an area of a creek that had been dammed up by beavers, hoping to catch some big trout. Panda had climbed out on a rock ledge and was looking for a way down when he saw the stock and action of an old rusty weapon sticking out of a tree, where the tree had grown around the barrel years before. It was about 10 inches above the ground. So he and his dad climbed down to check it out, and they found a small cave at the base of a rock formation. Inside that cave, they found 3 heavy, unopened cans of food, an old cast iron pot that had holes rusted all the way through it, a crusty old saddle and bridle set, and a very deteriorated, heavy wool blanket rolled up and tied with a leather belt. When they unwrapped the blanket, they found several personal items, including a rusty old cap and ball black powder weapon, a leather satchel with a lead weapon, a powder horn with no black powder in it, tarnished old cartridges, an item you'd use to shave with, and the most unsettling was a shirt with holes in it, and over half of it was stained in red. Now the only thing that somewhat dated this fateful campsite were the weapons, both of which were made sometime in the 1870s. Now there's no way to ever know what happened to the man who owned all this stuff, but the fact that he or somebody he knew was obviously targeted twice with some sort of weapon or maybe arrows, and all his belongings were sitting right where he left them, possibly 100 years later, kind of highly unlikely that he left that area alive. But discovering what amounts to a 100-year-old crime scene in the very remote wilderness kind of freaked out Camo Panda, and rightfully so. Alrighty, so there's this forest in Transylvania that has been called one of the world's most haunted places after a series of paranormal activities and strange occurrences. Granted, I get it, Transylvania is kind of known for all things ooky spooky vampire gothic, so that probably only helps with the rumors, but bear with me. There have been so many unsettling tales that have been told of this Romanian forest for hundreds of years that make it almost impossible to separate fact from fiction. It's known as the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. Why? Well, they tend to have strange disappearances in this forest. Like, oh, I don't know, a shepherd who's said to have disappeared with a flock of 200 sheep. There was a woman who disappeared for 5 years, and when she emerged 5 years later, she didn't age. Granted, I think one of the most strange tales that happened in this forest, at least, comes from the tale of a woman who disappeared with a 15th century coin in her pocket. And after a significant amount of time had passed, she returned, as if no time had passed, with the same coin. This forest's reputation as a home for the paranormal and alien encounters, is heightened by its eerie atmosphere of twisted skeletal trees that span across 700 acres. Oh, did you know there was UFO sightings that were reported and famously photographed in the 1960s by biologist Alexander Sift? And these photographs showed flying objects, and that's kind of how the forest got its reputation as being a place for the strange and unexplainable. But going back to those trees, they tend to hold a bit of an enigma of their own. They're 200 years old, but they seem to be young. They're twisted at the trunk, they're unusual in shape. Now, most of the paranormal whodunits seem to be concentrated in a particular part of the forest, which is free of vegetation and formed in a perfect circle. The soil of this vegetation-free area has been tested, and no anomalies were found that would actually prevent the growth of any plant life. Visitors often report intense feelings of anxiety, the feeling of being constantly watched, and the forest website is full of a lot of warnings. Turns out locals tend to stay away because they fear if they enter, they will never find their way out. There are a lot of first-hand reports from people who visited the forest and left with strange symptoms. We're talking mild cases of unease, physical symptoms like rashes, headaches, even burns. And there's a lot of videos online about people who have spent the night in the forest, and you're braver than I am. This next tale comes along courtesy of Grant Charbonneau, who along with his buddy Mike embarked on a hiking adventure on the day after he turned 18. Armed with a compass to navigate the labyrinth of trails, this duo set out to conquer the longest route leading to a camping spot deep within a forest. The color-coded paths ensured they stayed on course, but fate had other plans for these friends. As they ventured along the red route adorned with a tent emblem, a dilapidated sign hinted at an old dirt road, tempting them to deviate from their original plan. Intrigued by the mystery it promised, they forged ahead, discovering an abandoned place concealed by nature's reclaiming. This was a desolate structure. It was covered in graffiti, and it had a lot of ominous signs of warning. Keep out! Private property! Trespassers will be Undeterred by the messages, the guys breached the door's defenses, revealing a time-forgotten interior frozen in the mid-1980s. We're talking dust-covered relics, wild boar and stag heads on the walls. It just overall painted a picture of abandonment and eerie stillness. But curiosity was afoot, and the guys explored further. Mike went upstairs, Grant went into the kitchen. The overall eeriness kind of heightened as they stumbled upon a locked door beneath the stairs. Now, this is where I would say, hey, run for the hills, because if something is locked, it should probably stay that way. But hey, if they didn't do it, we wouldn't have a story, right? So determined, the guys broke the chains and uncovered a hidden staircase leading to a basement. And what a basement it was. So they took out their flashlights and illuminated the room. Everything was kind of covered in layers of dust, but they noticed some glass cases. And as they wiped away the grime, they were met with grotesque wax-like figures clad in various dresses. That's not all, folks. In the center case, the masterpiece, there, suspended in eternal something, was a clothed human figure. There was a yellow-stained envelope nearby that contained a handwritten note, revealing the twisted mind behind all of this. The author, a self-proclaimed collector, detailed a dark journey from taxidermy expert to a connoisseur of preserved human beauty. Each victim, immortalized in wax, became a masterpiece in this gallery. Now, this is where the guys were like, okay, I'm out of here. They ran out of the house, they ran out of the place, they ran out of the forest, and as eventually they got to Grant's car and they sat in the car, the weight of what they witnessed sank in. Yeah, they didn't go back. I wonder why. And that's all for today, folks. I've been Alexa. See ya!